It happened. The moment the palace spent 20 years making sure you would never see. William looked Camilla in the eyes. And he told her the truth. Welcome to Northwire. Subscribe now. To understand what this confrontation means, you have to understand the silence that came before it. 20 years of silence. 20 years of William sitting across tables from the woman he held, responsible in ways he has never publicly articulated, in ways that live in the part of him that is still 12 years old and walking behind his mother's coffin for the destruction of Diana's life. 20 years of Christmas photographs and state occasions and carefully managed public appearances designed to show a family that had moved on. They had not moved on. William had not moved on. He had waited. Because William understood something that Harry never fully grasped, that the confrontation when it came needed to happen from a position of power, not from grief, not from anger barely contained, from the unassailable position of a man who holds all the cards, and now with Diana's portrait on the wall, with the estate in his name, with Anne beside him and the future crown above him, William finally held all the cards, and he used them. Sources close to the royal family describe a specific moment, a specific conversation, a specific line that was crossed, in the weeks following William's decision to place Diana's portrait on the Hall of Matriarchs wall, after Camilla had failed to have it removed, after Charles had refused to countermand his son, after Anne had made her position devastatingly clear. Camilla made a mistake. She underestimated William, in a private conversation, the details of which have been carefully guarded but not fully contained. Camilla is said to have made comments about Diana, about Diana's legacy, about the direction William was taking the monarchy. Comments that were not respectful, comments that were not careful, comments that revealed what those closest to the situation have always suspected, that beneath Camilla's managed public image, beneath the dignified queen she presents to the world, there is still the woman who spent decades in direct competition with Diana, who still cannot look at Diana's name without feeling the shadow, who still even now, even from the position of queen, cannot resist the impulse to diminish. When those comments reached William, something shifted. The patience that had defined his approach for 2 decades, the careful, strategic, long-game patience of a man who knew his moment would come, gave way to something older, something that had been waiting since he was 15 years old. He requested a private meeting with Camilla. No aides, no advisors, no palace staff hovering nearby, just the two of them, and the truth that had been waiting 20 years to be spoken. Those with knowledge of the meeting describe it taking place in one of Windsor Castle's private sitting rooms. Not a formal space, not a throne room or a grand ceremonial hall, a sitting room. Intimate, the kind of space where the performance of royal dignity is harder to maintain, where the distance between two people and the truth they are carrying is at its shortest. Camilla arrived composed. She always arrives composed. It is perhaps her greatest skill, the ability to walk into any room and project a serenity that suggests nothing can touch her. William was already there, standing, not seated, a choice that those who know him say was entirely deliberate. He did not offer pleasantries. He did not ease into it. He began, and what came out of that room in fragments, through sources who have spoken with those present or close to those present, was not the polished, managed, press release version of a royal family working through its difficulties. It was 20 years of truth, delivered without apology, without the softening that protocol demands, without the performance of civility that had defined every interaction between them for 2 decades. Just William and Camilla. And everything that had never been said. We cannot put exact words in William's mouth, but we can tell you, based on what sources close to the situation have described what he communicated. William told Camilla that he knew, not in the vague, forgivable way of someone who suspects, in the specific, documented, impossible to deny way of someone who has spent 20 years quietly gathering the full picture. He told her he knew about the affair, not just the sanitized, publicly acknowledged version, the full timeline, how deep into his parents' marriage it ran, what it meant for Diana, what it did to a woman who was already fighting an institution that did not want her. He told her he knew about the influence she had over Charles, about decisions made and not made regarding Diana's support, her security, her access to the resources she needed. He told her that Diana had documented things, that letters existed, that records existed, that the version of history that the palace had carefully constructed was not the only version, and that as future king, he had both the access and the intention to ensure the fuller version was eventually known. He was not threatening, he was informing. There is a difference. And it is one of the most important differences in the room. A threat is the act of a man who is angry, and informing is the act of a man who has already decided. William had already decided. Sources describe Camilla's composure cracking for the first time in memory. Not dramatically, not in the way of someone who collapses under pressure, but in the small, revealing ways that composure always cracks when it meets something it cannot manage. A pause that lasted too long, hands that were not quite still, a response that began and stopped and began again. Because Camilla had prepared for many versions of this conversation. She had spent 20 years imagining what might happen if William ever chose to stop being diplomatic, if the civility ever broke, if the long, patient, strategic silence ever ended. She had run scenarios. She had spoken with advisors. She had constructed responses to the things she imagined he might say. But she had not prepared for this. For a William who was not angry, who was not emotional, not reactive, not the wounded son striking out from grief, but calm, certain, utterly, devastatingly in control. The William who walked into that room was not the boy who lost his mother. He was the future king who had spent 2 decades deciding exactly what to do about it. And Camilla, for perhaps the first time in their entire history, had no move to make. The confrontation did not stay entirely contained. In the days that followed, sources describe a palace atmosphere that those inside it have compared in private to the days after Diana's death. Not grief, not mourning, but that particular quality of tension that descends on an Cambrian institution when something irreversible has happened, when a line has been crossed that cannot be uncrossed. Charles was informed, not immediately, and that delay itself was a statement. William had not asked his father's permission, had not consulted palace aides or communications teams, or the machinery that usually manages these moments. He had simply done it. And now Charles sat with the knowledge of what had happened, in that sitting room, with the awareness that his wife had been confronted by his son, that the confrontation had not gone well for Camilla, that the balance of power inside the institution, the balance that Charles had spent his reign carefully managing, had shifted in a single private conversation. Camilla withdrew for several days. Her public schedule was quietly adjusted. Engagements were rearranged. The kind of subtle, unannounced changes that the palace makes when something needs time to settle. She did not return to the corridor where Diana's portrait hangs. She has not returned since. There is a scene Diana described once in a conversation with a close friend that was later relayed in the years after her death. She described what she wished she could have said to the palace, to the institution, to the people who had worked so methodically to diminish her. She did not describe it as a confrontation. She was not tilt for confrontation in the way that William is. Her gifts were different, warmer, more open, more human, but she described the wish to be heard, to stand in a room with the people who had decided she was too much trouble and make them understand fully, undeniably, without the option of looking away, what they had done, what it had cost, who she was. Diana never got that room. The palace was always faster than she was, always one step ahead, always able to manage and contain and redirect before the truth could fully land. But William got the room, and he walked into it carrying 20 years of everything Diana never got to say, every letter she wrote that was buried, every plea for support that was denied, every moment her title was stripped, her security reduced, her name minimized, her portrait hidden. He carried all of it, and he put it down in that sitting room at Windsor Castle, in front of the woman who had been at the center of it all. Diana asked to be heard. Her son made sure she was. That is not revenge. That is love. The deepest, most enduring, most unstoppable kind. The kind that does not end when the person carrying it is gone. The kind that passes from a mother to a son and lives in him so completely that 20 years later, in a quiet room in the palace, it finally speaks. Subscribe to Northwire. Comment below, what do you think happened after William left that room? This community sees what others miss. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Diana's story told the right way. We upload every single day. And we are just getting started. Thank you for being here on Northwire. New video tomorrow, new truth, new chapter. Subscribe, notify, share. The Crown has secrets. We uncover them every single day. See you tomorrow.